I really think that shorts are part of that Australian cultural vernacular that I think not necessarily a fashion statement, but definitely a comfort statement.
And when you've got the knees, you might as well flaunt them. Hello, Budri Gamawara from the Gadigal Lands here in Sydney. It's Startup 360. I'm Simon Thomsen and
I'm Majella Campbell.
And it is our final episode for 2025, number 41.
Woo-hoo.
So it has been a big year and we're going to go out with a bang. Mm-hmm. We have the fantastic Jim Cooper, a gentleman who is from Sydney originally, but has spent the last 30 years over in the US on the West Coast, and he has some pretty strong opinions. I had the chance to bump into him at an event a couple of weeks ago, and we really got talking and kicking the ball backwards and forwards. He's an AFL fan, and I'm wearing my Swannies because I was trying to put my Christmas colours on, and I thought this is the closest I could get.
It's dual purpose.
But it also is a reminder of AI, which I think is one of the big themes of this year, because I did use Google AI to try and find a story I'd written about Adam Goodes 10 years ago in 2015 when he was being booed. And I was pretty upset about that. And I teed off about what was going on and the problems I felt that Australia had with its culture, the way it treats its sports stars, and some of the bullshit that was all around it. Couldn't find it, but the hilarious thing is that the Google AI said that I was an AFL player who praised Adam Goodes. Now, the praising Adam Goodes part is absolutely correct. As I said to someone about this, the only position I played in AFL was left, right, out. And I coached my son's footy team for a few years, but at no stage did I ever lace on the boots and run onto a paddock playing AFL. And at this point, unless they are doing sort of, those electric cart versions of it, a little bit like murder ball.
There's still time.
Not going to happen. Yeah, the hammies would go straight away. But yes, this is my Christmas themed colours for episode 41. So a couple of big themes for 2025. AI is one of them.
Yeah.
What would you single out as the big stuff from this year?
There are so many, honestly. I feel like we've had a big one. I mean, the one that springs to mind, maybe because it's top of my mind all the time, is the change in the Sydneysider pub.
The move.
The big move. I think we've had... That's my whole my life.
Well, yeah. It did consume a lot of your life. Listeners who are unfamiliar.
Still recovering.
It was about 12 months ago, the New South Wales Minister, Annalak Chantivong, announced that the Sydneysider pub was going to relocate to an undisclosed location and from York Street, where it had been for 7 years, and the government put forward a range of arguments about how it was no longer financially viable. Investment New South Wales appeared before budget estimates in Parliament, sort of saying, hey, we tried to get people to move in, but, there were 7 floors and just not enough people there. Fishburners was impacted, Stone and Chalk, Antler, Tankstream Labs were the key tenants, but Microsoft was in there and a few others who'd moved out and they couldn't re-rent it. So the decision was made to go down to what was called the Scale Up Hub, and now it's called the Tech Central Innovation Hub.
Yeah.
We love a hub.
We love a good hub.
A Sydney hub.
A hub.
And but it was a little bit fraught at the last minute. And I remember talking to you saying, is it happening? Is it happening? Do we know? Do we know? And there was a lot of doubt right up until the moment where it actually closed a month or two ago. Finally sorted out. So the story ends up with a happy ending.
Yeah.
But can I just say, if you are in politics or you're implementing government policy, probably work a little bit on the story on the way through, just rather than sort of trying to figure out the ending after everyone's closed the book. That would be my advice for 2026.
I think that would make all of us a little easier.
Speaking of ongoing stories, the one that I want to single out, because I do think it was pretty epic, was, of course, Strongroom AI.
Yep. This
was a company that earlier this year got a major funding round in the tens of millions of dollars. 10 million of that came from EVP, the Sydney investor. Within a couple of weeks, the business had exploded. It was put into administration. There have been claims and counterclaims over what the founders did and didn't do, whether they deceived investors or didn't. This matter is going to the Supreme Court in New South Wales in 2026, early in the year, as EVP still attempts to get its money back. A few weeks back, of course, the liquidators of the old company were looking into it and quizzing the founder of the company about what was going on, and one of its key directors, who also happened to own a business that was being sold to Strongroom AI, Member Benefits Australia, which a lot of that funding went to. And I think they're exploring a few key issues. It's going to be interesting when that report drops at some stage down the track. Of course, this legal case will be an interesting one. A lot of lessons that I still don't think we understand about what it means to raise capital in this country, due diligence, what is acceptable for founders to say, because, of course, there's always lots of optimism in raising money and everyone is betting on where something is going to be down the track. Of course, Strongroom lives on. The pharmacist Joe Zhu, an investor in Brisbane, bought the business from the administrators for a song, given it was once worth $70 million. And it continues to operate, helping people with managing medications, the patients. But this still has a bit to play out. It will be, I'm up for Series 2 in 2026 of Strongroom AI. I think one of the other ones that stood out, mainly because it was just recent, was, of course, Kiki, the New Zealand company that is now in London. It made the jump from New York to London after closing down there, the third city it's been in. We'll see how that one plays out in 2026, backed by Blackbird. And I don't know, just interesting. Interesting startup.
Interesting.
And I think probably the other interesting thing, of course, well, the interesting things for 2026 will be whether Airwallex does become a public company. And, of course, Canva. All eyes are on Canva because there's been a lot of shares trading hands, a lot of backwards and forwards on what's going on with the business. And Cliff is flagging it as a public company next year. And, of course, there are a lot of investors and their LPs who are looking forward to maybe that moment, because Canva has, for the last 10 years, been the big story of Australian startup success. And I think a lot of people have their superannuation funds riding on that liquidity moment.
Yeah, well, there we go. We'll have to stay tuned, I guess.
Before we get Jim in to have a chat, any plans for the summer?
Plans for the summer?
Do you shut up shop at the start of the Christmas week, or are you sort of still in the office on the 24th of December?
For our members, they can
and then you rush out at 4 p.m. and go and grab all your Christmas shopping.
There was a bit of last minute shopping. I've been pretty good this year, actually.
Okay.
I've been pretty good. That's a first. I think, so we closed, we're open all the time to our members. So there's less of a shutdown now, but the team will take a break between Christmas and New Year.
So if I'm a founder and I am totally in hustle mode,
you can
I go into Fishies on Christmas Day?
You can go in at 2 a.m. at Christmas Day. Hopefully you're not. Hopefully you're doing something else.
No, because Santa won't come to you, kids. If you're up at 2 a.m.
Gotta
at
go to
Fishies, he'll probably just go straight over the top of Tech Central Innovation Hub and leave no presents for anyone. That would be sad.
That would be sad.
Because I think everyone gets a Series A this year. That's what
so.
they've all put on Santa's list.
That's on our list. Yeah, so my plans, I'm going to Queensland. Are you staying in town?
Domestic, yep.
Domestic.
I love Sydney in summer because everyone sort of
quiet.
nicks off to Palm Beach for holidays, and the place is quite quiet and chilled. We're in the inner west. There are enough breweries to keep me entertained, and of course cricket on the television. And Startup Data itself will be taking a break. Of course, there will be content going out on the site. And don't forget to go and watch all of the Startup 360 episodes on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple. You can go back through all 41 episodes. But we've saved the best for last. This is going to be my favourite. I reckon, should we get Jim Cooper in to have a chat?
Can't wait.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Startup 360. We are joined with Jim Cooper, who is
a man of many talents.
Absolutely. A bit of a pioneer, a bit of a startup veteran. Welcome, Jim, first of all.
Thanks a lot. And he's back in Australia, so he could wear his shorts, which is great. I feel like this is, finally Christmas is here, summer is here, and we have a guest in shorts. So,
among us.
The vibe. Thanks for bringing the vibe, Jim.
Oh, thanks very much, Simon, for having me. Majella, thanks very much. It's warm outside. It's actually a beautiful day outside here in Sydney today. And I really think that shorts are part of that Australian cultural vernacular that I think not necessarily a fashion statement, but definitely a comfort statement.
Oh, and when you've got the knees, you might as well flaunt them.
Thank you. I'll have you not look at my knees. Thank you very much.
All right, shall we do this?
Let's do it.
Over to you.
Awesome. Actually, to kick off with, do you want to just give us a little bit of a rundown about yourself and also a little bit about what you've been doing in the ecosystem across the last decade or so?
Yeah, a lot. But I try not to kind of frame it in terms of me. I don't think that I don't think I'm that important. But I grew up here in Sydney. And about 32 years ago, I moved to the United States. Settled in Southern California and have pretty much not left. I live in Orange County, which is kind of halfway between Los Angeles and San Diego. Although I do most of my work in San Diego and not in Los Angeles. I did for a time live in Los Angeles. I lived in Pasadena, but then moved to Orange County. I love Orange County. I think it's a great, quiet little microcosm of America.
It's kind of like the Northern Beaches version of Los Angeles.
It really is, actually. That's a really great analogy. My one of the things that I think is kind of unique about Orange County is it's a bit of a roadside attraction because we've got Disneyland on one side. I actually don't live too far away from Disneyland. And we get the 9:30 fireworks every evening, so that's really fun. You can hear the boom, boom, boom in the background when you're watching television. And you know, you've got like Knott's Berry Farm, and then you've got the beaches, and you've got all this kind of stuff. And it's actually really kind of nice. I like that kind of thing. It's a little bit inland. I live a little bit inland from the beaches, so it gets a bit warm. But the greatest thing about it is I coach our local Aussie Rules footy club. So I'm very much come from the perspective of being a footy coach. And I've been involved in the startup ecosystem in Southern California for about 30 years, believe it or not. So before it was cool to have a startup company, I was working in tech transfer and stuff like that. So that's kind of been my background. And then working through that, working for accelerators, entrepreneur in residence. I mean, I think I've done every single job, including being a founder in the Southern California startup ecosystem. So yeah, that's me.
So aside from the glory of the Orange County Giants...
great team, fabulous team, by the
way. We'll have to get them out here for the All-Australians sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What lured you there in the first place? Is it like you got your first Microsoft Word disk or...
I wish that was true.
Or an Apple sort of...
Windows 3.11111 or whatever it was, yeah. No, nothing glorious like that. I got married and moved to the US, kicking and screaming. I did not want to move there. Now 30 years later, look at me. I worked in a lab for a little while because the only qualifications I had was in biology. So I worked in a lab for a little while, and then I was kind of lured out by a couple of Australian mates who said, "You don't look happy and you need to do something else." And they offered me a job doing some tech transfer work for the Queensland government. So I hopped on board.
But you, if you look at your LinkedIn bio, it's kind of slightly longer than War and Peace.
It's long, isn't it? I know. And that's only about a quarter. I kind of got bored and kind of washed out from doing it and keeping it up to date. And so
that's his full-time job, LinkedIn bio.
Well, yeah, you can't. Like you've got to, you know, going from event to event or from, advisory role to, mentoring teams on Zoom or something. There's not a whole lot of time to update Zoom, and I'm not really interested in putting all the other stuff that seems fluffy. It seems nice. On the surface, it all seems, very professional and stuff. But, I don't think I really need LinkedIn anymore that much. I mean, just to have connections, right? Bump into someone and say, "Oh, would you like to connect?" or something. That's fine, because then you can use that.
When you're at the New South Wales Parliament, and I bumped into you
when
and
we
we
bumped
started
into
chatting,
each other. Absolutely,
and here we are.
Yeah, for sure. That's the kind of thing that I think I use LinkedIn for, and I think I kind of the things that I'm doing now, I kind of list at the top what I've on LinkedIn, so people go, oh, great, okay, yeah, that's what he's doing now. But apart from that, it is getting a bit long and unwieldy, isn't it?
But it's cool. I mean, the fact that, yes, you just mentioned the Queensland government, but you're over helping out university in UAE at one stage. And
I did.
You kind of get around, and there's a lot of mentorship. I go back to 15 years ago, and we joked about it, but you started working in accelerators before the idea of accelerators was really about. So tell us a bit about that moment back in 2010.
So about 2010, 2012, when I was working as an EIR for an incubator, because that was what they were. They were these business incubators. Everyone kind of came in, had a hot desk or grabbed an office, leased an office space. And there was a couple of other little bits of, boot campy kinds of things, more campy than boots. and they were a bit kind of ordinary. I'd studied biology, I'd studied political science, economics. I did a teaching course as well. So I was also at the time teaching school. I was teaching middle school. I had no money. I was trying to raise a fund, and I had no money. I had to go and do ordinary pedestrian kind of work. So I worked as a teacher. So I brought a lot of that pedagogy that I had learnt from teaching kids, and kids are one of the hardest to teach. So I was working 2 days a week as an EIR and 3 days a week as a substitute teacher. And I was kind of going, okay, well, the stuff that's happening at this incubator is not really working. Like this boot campy stuff, there was some teams that were, coming along and saying, yeah, well, we already know all that sort of stuff. And then
So a little bit like a teenager.
A lot like teenagers. and my students were asking me, oh, what do you do on the other 2 days? And I was trying to explain it to them. And they were asking really, really better questions, more pertinent questions about what's a startup? I have no idea what that is. I was teaching in a fairly depressed neighborhood in Los Angeles, and these kids had no connection to this other world. And so they were asking really, really important questions that I'd never really considered even asking startups. And I thought, what if we flipped the script a little bit and created a real pedagogy around getting companies accelerated? In a really ideal kind of world, we would be teaching startups things that they don't know, right? So that they can actually do the things that they want to do, like commercialize or their technology that they've discovered at a university, or exporting, or becoming ready for export even. Some kind of readiness level, right? Whether they've got technology readiness, market readiness, all those things need to be accounted for in the startup world. So, okay, so how do we craft an accelerator program? There was some accelerators that were just starting in those days. Y Combinator had just created their first batch, and I thought, okay, well, I don't want to be Y Combinator because there's a whole bunch of startups and investors and stuff in that world. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit more siloed, things that were around science and engineering, that kind of what we call deep tech now, although I still kind of call it applied science and engineering. And we want to kind of bring them out of the lab, get them into a outside of their comfort zone, and start getting them to think about how they turn their discoveries into something commercial that people who need their discoveries, that technology in their hands, so that we can make the world better, right? Change the world. So my first accelerator failed absolutely dismally. It was a horrible experience, but I persevered. It was a horrible experience because startups just at that time still were very skeptical, and they didn't know what to expect. They still didn't show up for, all this was in person, this is pre-COVID. They didn't show up for classes. They didn't show up for, demonstrations. I've brought the Port of Los Angeles here. Would you like to demonstrate your technology to a very relevant potential customer? Didn't show up. So that was really embarrassing. But things like that happened. slowly but surely they started one by one, two by two coming in and then saying, oh, we really need help. Can you help us? So then I started thinking, well, actually, this is not bad. We're actually getting somewhere now.
It's kind of, you're painting a picture. It sounds a little bit like Breakfast Club at this point.
Yeah,
What was
right,
going on?
right, exactly. And so, we started developing a lot more of these accelerator programs, calling them funky names and everything, and having some kind of specialty around them, whether it was to do with water or oceans or forests or agriculture or something.
Was that the light bulb moment, sort of that drill down into a very specific lane?
I think so. I think that's the you have to learn and adjust constantly.
Even as the teacher.
Even as a teacher, or at the time I was supposed to have also a market research company that I was doing some market research for early stage startups. I kind of tossed that in the bin because, now I was kind of concentrating on this other stuff, growing accelerators. Slowly but surely people started saying, can you develop an accelerator program for us? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Now I teach an accelerator program. I teach a 4-week and an 8-week course called ICOR, which is run by the National Science Foundation in the US. It's a foundational course link between the lab and the next step in commercialization, getting funding. And I think it's really, really good to a good methodology to kind of turn these fresh, young scientists into something different.
Awesome.
You've spent, most of your career helping bring other people's ideas and concepts into market. I'm interested to know what's kept you in the space for so long, and is there any particular favourites that you have, perhaps?
Yeah, there's a lot of favourites. One thing I learnt really early is never say no to a student. So I got a kind of a internal policy of never saying no to a student. That's not entirely true. I have said no to a couple of students, but no, I don't say no to a student. So I think that universities and even like the equivalent of TAFE in the US, community colleges, they're a fantastic engine for growing new ideas. So what's really kept me going through this is having faith that there's going to be another new batch of potential startups that are going to come through the university system, and they're going to need that help. They're really going to need some of that heavy lift initially. They're going to need introductions to investors and vendors, service providers, the whole lot. And they're going to want to do this in a way that's not only coordinated, but that it doesn't jumpstart doing the wrong thing, right? So it's got to be in a particular kind of an order. If they miss one node in that order, they might miss out on a grant. They might miss a deadline, and we don't want that to happen. So I've got to kind of keep them on the straight and narrow. And to that point, actually, this is the reason why I've decided as a footy coach to kind of bring in some of that footy philosophy into the mix. I know this sounds strange, but bear with me. I think it'll pan out fine.
It'll make sense to me.
I think that the only real metric, whether it's a startup or even an innovation hub like, Tech Central or wherever it is, we've only got really one metric. And that is at the end of the fourth quarter, we've got more points on the board than our opposition. So I treat every single startup as if it's 3/4 time, we're 5 goals 2 down, and we need to do something in the next 20 minutes to turn this game around so that we can win it. And if we approach it in that way, if we approach it in an instructional kind of a way, but we also say there's a bit of urgency here and we need to do this, I always find that we end up getting to the deadline and we finish, even if it's just like moments before you hit that button that sends your application off to, the Breakthrough Victoria or even, the NIH in the United States. You hit that button, if it's just 2 minutes to go, that's okay because we've done it before the siren. That's my philosophy.
No, good. kicking the ball as the siren sounds.
Well, we could do it as the siren sounds as well, but, sometimes.
No, I was thinking of sort of, from 50 out for someone to take the mark to kick the goal. No, you got to have the ball in your hand before then. This sporting metaphor, I'm a huge fan of this, and Christy Jenkins, and we've had great conversations with her, champion sports person, about that. She's about to bring the Techstars team to their sort of startup dead ball next week.
That's right. I'll be there. I'll be in attendance.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll catch up again. But I was thinking, in describing you, I could say startup doula, because you are that person who's there helping them give birth to their idea and to bring it to reality. What's the lesson that you've learnt? Because I look at what's going on nowadays, and I know you're a big fan of SynBio, but programs like the On Accelerate, which is run by Cyro, are focused on helping researchers and people who have a very intense focus on an idea to the business side of that idea. What's the lesson you've learnt in helping people translate what they're thinking about into a business opportunity?
You've got to get out of the lab, got to get out of the office, and you've got to go and talk to people. I mean, it's the number one thing, right? You've got to get out and you've got to start talking to potential customers. Find partnerships. Those are the things that are key. I cannot stress or reiterate that enough. I know it sounds kind of trite and overused, but unfortunately the studies and the metrics are in. If you don't go out and head out of the office and head out of the lab and go and talk to customers, you are never going to make any money. You're never going to make any headway in getting out to commercialization. It's just not going to happen. From that perspective, that's the lesson. The other thing is that there needs to be a lot more money, particularly I think in Australia, there needs to be a lot more money that goes into commercialization, particularly at the early stage. We've got a lot of startups. I don't think we have a shortage of startups in Australia. I think what holds people back is all the stuff that happens after you develop your startup. And as you head on that horizon, that far horizon to Series A, which is kind of the goal, I think, for most startups is to get, they can take a deep breath. Oh, we made it to Series A. Okay, we
crossed
can take
the
a deep
valley
breath.
of death.
We've crossed the valley of death, and or the multiple valleys of death. If you're certainly if you're a science operator, science or engineering, that's the kind of the big key driver of getting you, through that horizon. I think that's the key. But this is a continual process. It's a living process. And I think you've got to get a lot of funding in order to do it properly. There's always going to be leakage. And I think that's okay if you've got a large enough pool of cash to allow for that to happen, for that to recycle and continue. Because the startups are going to go and make money, and it's going to pull back. Hopefully, I mean, theoretically, that's what it's supposed to do, right? So that's what I've learned on that micro level. On the macro level, I think Australia could learn a lot from the US model. I'm not saying we should just take it and plop it in Australia and hope that we've got the right characteristics and soil to do it. Yeah, sure, but I think we could do better. We could do a lot better than what we are. I think there are some cultural barriers that Australia needs to rethink.
Right, let's go into those, because I was thinking of a conversation, an Australian founder who went over to the US, was so impressed, and kind of came back and made a post about sort of, going a little bit more hardcore in his team. And the blowback on that one was pretty torrid. Is that what we're talking about, or what are your thoughts?
I think there's three key things that Australians have, and there's the three isms, I call it. Mm-hmm. I think I've talked to you about these three isms before, but I if we're going to do a bit of a dive into this, solipsism, we tend to look at ourselves more than we look outwardly. Navel gaze a lot, write a lot of reports. Great at writing reports in Australia. It's a report.
Well, so we have something to ignore.
There is report economy, I call it. Well, I don't call it that. Actually, a mate of mine just called it that yesterday as well. It's it's very much this, we gaze inward, we see what we're missing, and then we do very little about it except write a report. We don't address the problem head on. We like to be safe, and we like to say a lot of safe things in Australia. We like to be very comfortable and polite. We don't like to tell the hard things that people don't like to hear. We can't confront that in Australia, and I think that's a real fault of ours. Being on the outside looking in, and kind of seeing that now, it makes me cringe. It kind of makes me a little bit angry as well. The next one is chauvinism. I think we've got a sense of entitlement for ourselves. I think we think that we're better than we are sometimes. You hear a lot of aphorisms like we punch above our weight, or there's a missing middle and everything. But really, in reality, we've just got to do better. We don't have to try harder. I think we work very, very hard. I think Australians are probably one of the hardest workers in the world. I think we just got to do it better. We've got to do it smarter, and we've got to take advice, and we've got to take that advice on the chin. I have always thought that Australians had really thick skin until coming back to Australia and realising that Australians don't have as thick a skin as what I had once expected. Once thought.
But it's a cognitive dissonance as well, because we're also convincing ourselves that we're blunt and outspoken and all of these other things. We are. And lawless when we are the most rules-based country in the bloody world.
Yeah, look, we have a tendency towards that. I think we are blunt, we are frank with people, but others. Not ourselves.
Okay.
We can't hold a mirror up to ourselves very effectively in Australia. We like to say that about other people. We like to go out and say, oh, well, the United States would be better if it was Australia. I mean, it's true. I say this all the time, right?
That's a great Monday's Experts line.
It's silly, but it's true. The last one is that we're very parochial. So parochialism is, I think, another thing that we then tend to keep the things that we've got to ourselves. And I don't know whether these three things really serve us very well. It leads to things, symptoms, becomes symptomatic of that expression is something like tall poppy syndrome, which if I could just dwell on this for just a sec.
Yes, please do.
Well, just dwell on this for a sec. We have selective tall poppy syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
We actually don't have tall poppy syndrome at all in Australia. I think we have very much selective tall poppy syndrome. If you're an NXS type band, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm dating myself here, right? And it's 1980, and you're just cutting the album Shabu Shabar,
mm-hmm.
And you've got your Nick Launay's and stuff like that, doing all of your sound engineering in some distant London studio, and then all of a sudden you're selling all these records in the United States and England. Well, that's great, but that's over there. We don't tell them, oh, geez, what are you doing? You've left Australia, and oh my gosh, how terrible, and why do you want to go over there for when you've got a perfectly good market here? We don't say that to NXS. We say, good luck, go, make an album, be big. And then they were, and then they came back to Australia, and then they were, rock stars and, on the front cover of all, smash hits and all those old 80s.
Yeah.
Kinds of stuff.
I remember us getting terribly excited because Little River Band and Air Supply were doing well on the US charts.
Right, and changing the balance of payments figures, right, every time they sold a record. I mean, this,
and Akadaka.
Yeah, this is the problem that we have. We have the selective switch when it comes to tall poppy syndrome. Really, for startups, it shouldn't exist because we've proven ourselves through other means, whether it's our sporting heroes doing well overseas or our music and artists doing well overseas. And I think that should be the template, yeah? Rather than the template that we've got, startups, you shouldn't go overseas. You've got to prove yourself in Australia first. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. I'm just sick and tired of hearing that. Those are just excuses, and we shouldn't be entertaining those excuses anymore.
It's kind of like being focused on making Mossman first grade rather than sort of just trying to be in the test team.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. I think we've got we have got a very talented bunch of people coming out of not only universities but also precincts. They're doing everything they can. But, also we're not giving people that are emerging out of garages or home offices, we're not giving them a chance either, the regions. I did a quick kind of napkin calculation. There's about 8 or 9 startups that are internationally backed out in kind of the Orange Bathurst kind of an area. And that's a population of about 92,000, right? Roughly
Yep.
92,000 people. That's a ratio of about 1 in 11,000, 1 in 10,500 people, right? We have 250 internationally backed startups here in Sydney with a population of 5.5, nearly 6 million people. It's now just on raw ratios, that's 1 in 22,000. So who's doing better just by that raw statistic? I know people are going to say, well, Jim, that doesn't include, the market cap, or it doesn't include, valuation cap or any of those kinds of things. Great, fine, yes. But if we started translating innovation across all of Australia, not just regions, not just precincts, not just universities, I think we'd have a better time in converting startups, early stage startups, into a real commercializable powerhouse. That would be the envy of other parts of the world, including where I live in California.
And what do you think is most fundamentally misunderstood about building startups or just the startup ecosystem in general?
Time. Startups think they don't have enough. Investors don't think that there's enough time.
Or it's taking too long.
Sure, it's taking too long. I think that there's a skewed idea on the value of bootstrapping, both in Australia and the United States. I think there's a middle ground that we could probably accommodate. If you bootstrap too much in the United States, you're ignored. You're now kind of damaged goods. In Australia, it's a measure of grit, right, and resilience. I think there's a comfortable middle ground. We need to find it. So I think there's 2 things: time and definitely the idea of bootstrapping. I think those are the 2 that I would kind of call out.
I want to go back to the tall poppy thing for a second because I grapple with it too. And I'm trying to figure out whether it's more a no dickheads policy or, stop being a wanker. Yeah. Or is it truly tall poppy? Because a lot of people who I think you are so far out in front of the pack complaining that you're being picked on, it's just calm down. It's why would you even notice? It's I'm always surprised by some of the people. And I do think there is a bit of an issue, but I do think that some of the people who get triggered by this, really, who gives a fuck what anyone else thinks?
You think, so I've heard this argument before. And as recently as yesterday, let's just have a no dickheads policy. Okay, so unpacking this for a sec.
Yeah.
What's wrong with dickheads? What's wrong with them? What do we have? What is the actual issue with the dickheads? Why?
It's a flexible dickhead.
So if they're doing good work,
yeah,
and we can ignore them 50% of the time when they're actually being a dickhead, the other 50% of the time they're doing really good work, why don't we just ignore them when they're being a dickhead and just say, acknowledge that they're doing great work and then just continue? I just don't think that's a measure of what we're talking about when we're talking about tall poppy syndrome. I think there is genuine tall poppy syndrome in Australia. I think it happens particularly working class Australians who want to grow, get educated, be better, get out of their situation. I think that has definitely been a problem in the past, holding Australians back. Genuinely, it has been. We've translated this over into other industries now. We've gone, okay, well, everyone's got the opportunity in Australia now to go to university and do all those kinds of things. I don't think it's about being a dickhead. I think being a dickhead is about being a dickhead, honestly. If you're a dickhead, then, just stop. But I think tall poppy syndrome is an actual thing. I think we do have We do have a.
Is it a class envy, or is it just
there's a bit of that.
drag everyone back into the peloton?
Yeah, I think it's drag everyone back into the peloton. I think that's the idea is that to keep there are functionally strata that are and structure that will allow us to be pulled back. That doesn't allow us to advance. Some of these are written into the rules-based order, which you talked about earlier, that is in Australia. I'll give you a good example of this. If a startup founder fails here, they become bankrupt, they can't become a founder in 5 years, right? In the United States, that sense of failure is considered pick yourself up, brush yourself off, do it again. And so we can cycle, in the United States, we can cycle startup founders a lot more that have learned from their mistake and become better founders. We don't have that ability in Australia. These are structural problems in turning founders into better founders and having better, more resilient startups.
Is it 230 plus years of European punitive mindset?
I think there's a bit of that. I think there is a sense of currency versus sterling, right? Don't you reckon it's time just to get rid of it? I mean, has it passed its age? It's used by date. I think so. I mean, it's a bit stale to hear all that. I'm certainly not an adherent to the currency versus sterling argument. I think we're better than that now. I think we mix a whole lot better. Yeah. I mean, I think there are people who started off in the working class and now live in places like Wallara. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's some pretty bloody amazing houses out in Western Sydney too.
Absolutely, right. So we shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have that sense of feeling entitled around a certain class or a certain position or a station in life. I don't think we should do that anymore. I think it's over. We pride ourselves on being egalitarian, so just live it.
Yep.
Make peace with those insecurities when people are succeeding. I'm interested to get your thoughts on what early signals about a research program that tells you that it's going to be
a research program, not just the startup, or do you want both?
Startup? Maybe both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with the research program. I think there has to be a multi or cross-disciplinary approach to the research that's being done anyway. So I am the commercialization advisor at an accelerator program at Scripps Oceanography in San Diego called the Start Blue program. We have the US Navy right next door. We have the Pacific Ocean right out in front of us. We have
keep heading west, you land in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. You continue, keep going. We have a huge harbour that does everything from ice cream vendors all the way through to having container ships and we have a part of the estuary towards National City that has an oyster bed, and they're redoing that whole seawall. So there's lots of opportunities for startups that are doing a bunch of different things to, have pilot projects that are working in those areas. So the dynamics that I think in a program is that you need to have that kind of multi and cross-disciplinary approach. So a program needs to have, okay, well, you're working on biology, but biology for this area that's say, we've got a company that's working on ship coatings, hydrophilic ship coatings, so that the ship can move through the water better. It's a biological technology, applying it into an industry which is a heavy industry, lots of, big rusty machinery. So I think you do need to have that approach, right? You need to go up and talk to engineers, and engineers are going to put one hand on their hip and they're going to say, oh, we can't use that here. And then finally end up using it here, right? I think that's the mark of a good program, right? You know it's a good program because it's got cross and multidisciplinary perspective. Then you want to aggregate a bunch of mentors, good siloed mentors. They understand particular areas, synthetic biology you mentioned earlier. You need to have that. That is going to give you that stickiness with people understanding, you understanding where you need to be, the mentor understanding how you need to get there, and kind of is able to be that translator, right? If we kind of use language terms, they're going to be that translator that gets them there, right? So we need those. The other thing in a good program is I think you need to have an avenue to a pilot, which then unlocks something else. That pilot will then unlock a permit. That permit then unlocks a customer. That customer then unlocks 4 other customers, and you're off to the races. Because once you get that demand, the investor is going to come in and go, oh, you've got demand. Now we can calculate this on a multiple. Great, perfect, we're done. Off you go. That's the mark of a good program. And I think we've got it at Start Blue. The mark of a good startup, it's a little bit more murky. But I think that a startup definitely needs to have some coachability. If they're listening and they're asking lots of questions, I think that's the mark of a very, very good founder. Also, I like founders that want to work in the quiet. They're happy to go off, do the work that's necessary, come back to the lab or office or whatever, and just do. Like if they're continually posting selfies and here I am at this event and everything like that, I think that's when they get distracted. That's when they're starting you need to reel them back in and say, no, we're not doing that. What we're really doing is the actual work, so that then in the future you can do that. Or you've got people who will do that.
Yeah.
So
don't go on the book tour before you've written the book.
Exactly, right. So I think that's the key, right, is that if they can work in the silence, if they can ask lots of questions, if they're curious, and they're coachable, I think then those are the attributes that you really, really need in a good founder.
You mentioned earlier the comment that, we just plonk a bit of Australia in America and things would be fixed. And you flagged some of these, what would you plonk in Australia from America?
Well, look, I would actually plop a bit of Australia into the United States. I really, really would. Let me get this on the record. Yep. There are plenty of things, startups. We could build programs in the United States that would emulate some of the projects that we have here. I really like Beanstalk. I think it's a good program. I think we should have a Beanstalk program in the US, and have those Australian companies that would be here in a Beanstalk program in the US, solving ubiquitous problems, universal problems that are persistent. We need to do that.
Yep.
We just need to do that. Just out the gate. There, it's on the record. What will we bring to from the United States to here? I was talking to my friend Martin Bleemel the other day from UTS. He has been talking about the Canadian program, the Lab to Market program. I think I've worked in ICOR, and I think that's a very, very good and resilient program, and I think we need to bring it to Australia. We need to, of course, adapt it for Australian conditions, but I think that would be a key foundational. Now, many people will probably turn around and say, well, Jim, we've got similar programs, blah, 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 blah. But this is a national program, and it level sets everyone, right? This is a basic that you need for everyone. Everyone just needs this basic. That really helps on the translational side. And it triggers, in the United States, it triggers something else, which is called the SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Grant. There's 3 phases depending on the agency that hands these out. There's about 13 agencies that hand them out, and it's very effective. Technically, over the life of 3 phases, you get up to about $3 million of funding for early stage startups. It is written into law, bipartisan support, all of those kinds of things. I think that's something that we should definitely think about introducing into Australia. Broadly, across the board, I think it is probably one of the best accelerator programs that's out there. So those are the 2 things that I would bring. from a programmatic structural point of view.
What about mindset?
I'm not a huge believer in the term mindset. I think what we really need to, because it gets a lot of woo, right? Can get really kind of woo, right? I would prefer that Australians have a lot more situational awareness than mindset. I think they just need to be aware of their surroundings, not bump into things. I think that's probably a better way of putting it.
Yep.
I'm interested to know, having the experience of working with a lot of founders, then becoming a founder yourself, and then going back and working with more founders, what has that taught you that you didn't, that process that you wouldn't have otherwise had?
I don't know if I can answer that question because I really don't. I really consider it as being a continuum. I don't, empathy. I think that's probably that's going to sound woo, isn't it? Oh no. What have I done?
I think it's a very tangible thing though. I feel like empathy is an incredibly overlooked part of it. Maybe it ties in with not bumping into things.
Yeah, maybe, right? I think, maybe you might be right. Yeah. I think you've just got to have an empathy, not only for others, but other situations and really kind of say, okay, well, I was in a similar situation and here's how you can rectify that.
It was something about Satya Nadella talked about at Microsoft in his book. So, and he kind of knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
so that's okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe empathy. Maybe that's probably part of the, I'm going to say woo again, part of the journey.
We can be a little woo sometimes.
Sorry, I'm that mean to use any of these aphorisms, right? I'm not that guy. And now all of a sudden I find myself on a podcast and I'm that guy. Yeah.
Gets the best of you.
Politics. I do want to canvass that because it's an interesting space, and we were listening to a speech from a politician the other night where they were talking about Wi-Fi and Cochlear and moments like this.
Right, yeah.
And my observation to a couple of people beside me is it's a little bit like saying the LA music scene is fantastic because of Neil Diamond's Hot August Night. We have moved on a little bit, yet they still keep bringing out the old tropes.
The old nuggets.
Yeah.
Yep, Cochlear.
Back in my day.
What is it? Cochlear. Let me get this right. Hills Hoist, Cochlear, the flight recorder.
Yeah,
Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
What else?
That's about it.
That's it?
Yeah. Okay, that's what we did back in the war.
I got it right.
But I the interesting thing, because you were talking about before the investment that needs to go on now, and you were talking about the unlocking in the US.
Yeah.
There is a bunch of programs around in New South Wales, for example, the MVP, which has just been revamped and now is in a different situation. I was looking at the NRLF, the federal government's $15 billion fund, which gave a $100 million loan to a company that is part owned by Brookfield that they bought out of Origin Energy this week. It's kind of, I'm not sure that we're always particularly imaginative in terms of where we're putting taxpayer funding.
Well, we could just stop at just imaginative, honestly. Yeah. I think we're just not imaginative.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. I think we could really do with a bit of imagination the way that we deploy capital here. And it is sometimes political, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also sick and tired of hearing the same stories over and over and over again. Again, they become tropes, and I just don't. I just switch off, right? If I hear another Cochlear thing again, I'm going to go, hey. Being completely honest about it, but we need to have our political class give examples of success. Okay, that's fine, and we need to fund potential successes, even if they're risky, even if they fail, and even if we, cock up $180 million. Sorry, Australian taxpayers and others, but I'm sorry, we have to take those risks. I think in the United States people take those risks. I think in Europe people take those risks, but somehow here in a G20 country we can't take those risks. That doesn't seem right to me. It just doesn't seem fair, right? We've really got to do better in the way that works. And insofar as stories are concerned, I think we should start talking about how other things our imagination spurred a new generation of either founders or like what was that mechanism? What actually flipped the switch? What made us, okay, so if the cochlear implant is what you're going to go with, then what was it that then helped a new generation of founders become founders? Right? What created a new generation of startups to go and start up?
That sense of PayPal mafia?
No, I think it's really about going an extra step and talking about what that story is, like creating the narrative and saying, look, most of the people that I hear stop at saying, well, we've had cochlear implant.
Punching above our weight.
Mate, right?
Back in the day when Lionel Rose was boxing.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so we stop there. We don't go further and say, and it did this. What did it open up for Australia? Not what the company actually opened up for Australia, but what did the company's success actually, did it open a gate and all of a sudden, 50 startup founders went through that gate and they went on to do, what did they do? What did they do? I want to know what they did. That's the bit that we're not getting. We're not going further with the narrative. We stop at cochlear implant. Which is why I go further back, 60,000 years back, and I say that the greatest Australian invention has been the boomerang. What did that do? It helped us. Early Australians hunt. It helped them create a culture, and it's a living culture that still exists today, unbroken today. Right. So I think that's the key narrative that we need to tell people. We've had a story, we've had a history, and it goes back way further than the first accelerator and the first venture capital firm on Sand Hill Road. We've got to tell that story. We have to. And it's not just that. We don't tell the story of Howard Florey. We don't tell the story of penicillin, how penicillin came to be, and how an Australian from Adelaide did this.
Speaking of them, David Unapon, the South Australian Indigenous preacher who invented the wide comb shears, which 100 years later is technology we still haven't improved on.
Yeah, right. So I think there's a lot of stories that we could tell that we don't. Kevin Sheedy's rocket hand pass, just going back to football for a moment. Kevin Sheedy's rocket hand pass sped up the game, and as a result, created that more athleticism that we see in AFL players today. Without that, we'd still be, possibly still be, a relatively non-professional game. And I think that's this is indicative of the style that I think Australians can affect. But we just got to do better at doing it. We just got to tell better. We got to tell a better narrative. Now, on the politics side, I think we need to hold politicians accountable and policymakers accountable. I think that there's a big issue in Australia in translating the policy that happens in these kind of lofty places up here and translating it down to the street level where the startups and the founders are. That translational gap alone, I think, is disastrous for Australia. And if we could get an understanding of that gulf,
talk to the customers,
right? And getting and I'm not talking here about creating another CERD document, although that's happening, I'm told. I think we've got to actually get down to the street level. I think policy needs to be made at that street level and taken up to the top instead of the other way around. It cannot be hierarchical down. It has to be up, bottom up. Because I think the founders know best. They're going to eventually become our next breed of investors if they exit well, and we need to be prepared for that.
I love that. For the next 10 years, where do you see the startup ecosystem going? And I know you don't like talking about yourself, but what role do you want to have in creating that?
I'm not very good at being. I'm not very good at attaboys. I hate attaboys. I do not want to be patted on the back or any of that sort of stuff. I don't. 10 years from now, I think we've got a choice in Australia. We can continue along this path, or we can introduce really serious innovation policy, really serious innovation policy that really puts us on the map. We've got the capacity and we've got some of the capability. I think we've got some of the capacity and some of the capability. What we need now is an investment in capital, not necessarily just money capital. I think we need to really invest in intellectual capital that allows us to translate all of the good stuff that helps multiply, we create a multiplier effect into the Australian ecosystem. I think we're at a crossroads. I think today we're at a crossroads, and I think there's enough people that are getting kind of pissed off. You know, I use this as an example a few times, but Greg Miller from Arena Mars had an article in Forbes, I think it was, saying, you know, we are at a crossroads. Had a couple of prescriptive ideas, none of which I necessarily agreed with 100%, but I think it's good to have this conversation, and I think we need to have more voices having this conversation. I think we need to give ourselves permission to actually do this, because I think, you know, we are in a situation where we tend to not give ourselves permission because of the aforementioned tall poppy syndrome. But I think if we give ourselves permission to do that, and if enough voices get heard, then I think the policymakers will come and meet us where we are, because I think we in the innovation community have an obligation, to future generations of innovators and founders and investors and startup culture. We should see this as a civic duty.
So in that context, what does Jim Cooper want for Christmas?
Whoa. Porsche. No.
Yeah. Anything from PS5
That's
to World Peace.
That's on my Santa list too.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Geez, what does Jim Cooper want for Christmas? Well, it's not for Christmas, it's for next year. I'd really like the Swannies to get up, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I'd really, really love the Swannies to get up next year. I really wish that Charlie Curnow could kick, a Mozza of goals and we could cheer.
He'll look good in red and white.
Yeah, absolutely, right. I'm wearing my red and white shoes today, by the way, folks, just so everyone knows. But what does Jim Cooper want for? Oh, wow, you mean people. You are so mean.
We do the tough stuff here.
There really is tough stuff. All right. I would like to meet with a couple of politicians, certainly, and tell them that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. I'd like to lay out what some of those jobs could be. I think I've got a nice set of picks and shovels and other things that will help us get on with that work. I don't think I'm really asking for anything for Christmas except to at least grab a couple of meetings with people. Certainly with founders, I'd like to have a lot more meetings with founders on this trip that I'm back here until beginning of February. I'd like to have a lot more meetings with investors and see where their heads are. I hear a lot of stories about both from investors and founders saying, we got a lot of risk, Jim, and but you're in the business of risk, whether you're a founder or whether you're an investor, you're in the business of risk.
It's kind of like going sailing and say there's a lot of water around here.
Yeah,
exactly. Too much wind here. What's going
on? Maybe you should kind of rethink this.
Umpire, he's bowling fast balls at me.
That's right, exactly. So I think for Christmas, what would Jim like for Christmas? Not
a report.
Not another report. Definitely not another report. I'd like to meet with people. I think we need to get down to the street level
Yep.
I think I'd like to meet with more founders, investors, and some policymakers, whether those are elected officials or actual bureaucrats that have some ideas, but would like to know more information about how we can really accelerate the Australian startup ecosystem. That's what I'd like for Christmas, if we're sticking to that as part of the narrative of what I want for Christmas. Otherwise, I'd really like a new pair of jeans because I love wearing jeans and t-shirts and stuff like that. I think it's the kind of that casual. I think that casualness in the startup realm, I think, is really what we need to cultivate more, rather than the R.M. Williams and the elastic-sided Chelsea boot kind of thing that with the slacks and stuff. I think we need to get out of that mode. I think we need to be, if we need to be comfortable in our own skin, we need to be comfortable. And I think that we need to think about being the kind of the jeans and t-shirt crowd.
All right. Well, Jim Cooper, thank you for joining us on Startup 360.
Thanks so much.
Have a great Christmas. I'm going to have a chat to Santa, see what we can do. And, may your stockings be full of meetings for 2026.
Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it, both of you. Thanks a mil.
Well, what about you? What's on your Christmas wish list, aside from the Porsche?
Aside from the Porsche, it's actually quite a hard question. What is on my Christmas?
Fish is going off.
Fish is going off, and more time with my friends and my family. That's my New Year's resolution for next year. What about you?
And a fabulous bunch of guests on Startup 360 in 2026.
Absolutely.
With you by my side. Thank you so much for joining me here on the chair and
thank
talking
you
about
for
amazing
having
people.
me.
It's been a wonderful experience. Absolutely loved it. I do want to thank the team from Private Media, especially the fabulous Matt Jackson, the man of many talents. Hopefully he gets a Cronulla Premiership in 2026. But we really appreciate his efforts. To James, to Ella, to so many members of the team who helped make this happen. We hope you have a great Christmas, some time with your family, maybe a bit of beach time. Whatever brings you joy, may it come your way. We'll see you in 2026. Thanks for joining us on Startup 360. Bye for now. Merry Christmas, and here's to a wonderful year ahead.
See you next year.